Hello, Earthlings. Hello, Earth Angels. Spiritual warriors. Just recorded a very long video. Not sure if I'm going to put that one out there. Maybe. Often I record videos and I'll even post them sometimes. Then I get this thought like, man, I need to take that one down. I think it's the OCD, or it's like I want to put the highest quality, most distilled, most potent content out there. Or something. I don't know what's going on there, but so maybe it's good sometimes just to let stuff ride. I recorded a bunch of stuff recently and just deleted it all because it felt out of alignment. And that could be OCD. That could well be OCD. So anyways, I'm going to I want to do a shorter video, hopefully, knock on wood here, just to talk about this idea of embodiment on the spiritual path. Now, there is an actual physical reality to that embodiment of clearing out all the sort of layers of frozen, undigested, yet to be catalyzed, you could say repressed energies, I guess shadow material, let's just say energies in the body, connected to old wounds, old memories, stuff we haven't been able to process. That's a good portion of what the spiritual path is alchemizing, is digesting, metabolizing, transmuting, transforming that energy, releasing, healing, you could say. Digesting, did I say that? And that does lead to an actual physical embodiment, within your apparent physical body, but there's multiple layers there, but so that is one way to understand that word embodiment. But another way, and it's related, but I guess at a different altitude or a different dimension, different level, different layer of embodiment, is this idea of bringing your healed self into the world, moving through the world, in a truthful way, in a healed way. You could say as the truth. It starts to sound a little bit grandiose, but in an aligned way, in a true way. And that's language that, the antonym, or that, if we were to talk about it in a negative sense, it means not manipulating, not moving through the world in a defended, manipulative, aggressive, or frightened way. Let's just stay with that word, manipulative, not moving through the world in a manipulative way, dishonest way. And it comes as an important teaching because a part of the spiritual path has us. Retreat isn't quite the right word because it implies a flight from something difficult or something, kind of surrender in a negative sense. The spiritual path is the exact, we've got this so wrong, so backwards in the world. The world as it is, the kind of default world of addiction and confusion and people hurting people hurting themselves, no accountability, suppression, addiction, distraction. That's the easier world. It's hell. It's awful. It will eventually self-destruct, in our personal lives and collectively. But that's the default, that's the norm. And so when we say retreat from the world, God takes us out of the world often, to varying degrees, at least to some extent, to varying degrees. It's a retreat deeper into a deeper reality. You're doing something countercultural, to say it mildly. Um, you could say noble, something very. Trying to think of the right term here. Special is one way to say it. Different, but that's kind of vague. Just forgive me, I can't think of a good word. Countercultural comes a little bit closer, but you're doing something extraordinary, out of the ordinary, something that is not default, something that is a high calling. It's the highest calling, really, to heal, to turn within. It's like the default world. Another name for that is momentum, movement, motion. And the healing path is predicated on a stop. Ultimately, you could say that if there's a movement in any direction, it's a return. It's a movement back in this direction, back towards our wholeness. The momentum leads towards greater fragmentation. The world leads us towards greater fragmentation, splintering of the spirit, of the psyche, of emotions, relationships, of reality itself, of the world at large. But there's a stop, a recognition. Shit, this game is just getting me deeper and deeper into the mud, and I'm breaking. I'm not able to bear up under this pressure. So that stop is either, could come prior to a rock bottom, prior to a catastrophe, prior to a point of desperation. It could happen that way, but for many of us, it's the stop that happens as we break, as reality breaks us, as this world breaks us. Because the sickness of the world, uses us as vectors, but eventually the vectors, these bodies, they break down. We're not built for constant momentum. We're not built for all the toxicity of the world. But so yeah, there's a stop, and then the spiritual path basically is just that stop. If you can manage that, just that stop, that's it. That's the whole thing. Surrender. Stop. Break down to break open. Breaking down into a breaking open, to a breakthrough. But yeah, like I said, if we want to conceptualize it as a movement, it could be a movement back towards, the self, through all the layers of density and pain. And so that typically implies an extraction, you could say, from the world. But again, the language here is so backwards because you're not running from anything. It's not a retreat as in running from. It's a deepening into. It's a coming into truth. It's a contending with the pain rather than it's a saying, I am no longer going to perpetuate this cycle onto others, onto the world, onto this one. That's what's so revolutionary about it. That's what's so radical. There's a good word for it. That's what's so radical about the commitment to truth, the commitment to healing. And so, yeah, something is born, hopefully, or something is born in that commitment, in that breakdown, in that stopping. And there is, in an ideal situation, a kind of protected space for some of this new light to break through and to grow or you could think of it as a seed that's planted, and that there's this protected space for this little sprout to grow until it gains some strength. Like a protective fence around a little sprout, seedling. I can't think of the right terminology here. Sapling. An embodiment in that context. So, in that framing, in that context, in that movement, embodiment comes as a step of, now how do we've had some of this healing, we've had some of this light breakthrough. Now we're starting to try to move that out into the world, back into the world, the return journey, coming down from the mountain, whatever metaphor. There's many metaphors here. An embodiment in that sense means to be able to bring your healing, back into the world. Let's just use that as a simple definition with 20 asterisks and caveats and shades of nuance to put in there. But now and there's wisdom in that, and that's an important thing. What I want to speak to here, and I've kind of laid that out, is a caution with embodiment. So I went through a long out of being pulled out of the world phase, I guess, is one way to talk about it. Again, it's hard not to feel like a fraud and a phony in these videos, because you create a narrative which by necessity just simplifies reality, which is so multifaceted, and there's so many other things and different levels here, and you won't be able to touch all of them. But in order for it to be kind of useful, you kind of simplify in ways that I can feel parts of my being, talking about this now, feeling like, don't be a phony, bro. Don't, don't sugarcoat it. Don't be too simplistic with it, be authentic. But I can't be perfectly authentic when I'm just doing my best here, and I'm trying to make it somewhat straightforward, so forgive me. Because it is more of a complicated story, but broad brush strokes here. Yeah, there's a long time that I was out of the world and in a state of great dysfunction in many ways, and doing my best to heal and let the stuff surface and to transmute. But I got really out of balance in that direction, bumped up against poverty, homelessness, etc. Long story here, but had to ended up having to take a job, and at that point, I was so deep into the surrender in some ways. Again, there's kind of pathological, neurotic, unhealthy aspects of what happened for me here. That would take a lot longer to unpack, but part of it was just such a deep commitment to surrender that I sort of got unbalanced, and this happens to people on the spiritual path, that you sort of lose track of some of the practical dimensions of daily living, so yeah, I had to take a job, and because I'd been out of work for a long time, it was challenging, to say the least, to get it into a position. Let me see, how can I make this more general and useful? So I've been at this job for about 6 months, and it's been a fucking nightmare in some ways. It's been really fucking brutal, because I've still got a lot of unhealed stuff going on inside of me, and working full time and not getting paid that much, just trying to stay afloat, and mostly just working with other people. I work in this big store. It's a lot of people. It's like there's a lot of employees and every walk of life, cranbox of humanity. The ambient level of healing, if we're going to use that way of speaking, is minimal. Now, nothing's absolute here. There's some real gems that you come across anywhere in the world, and this place is no different. But it's relatively low paid, and it's not really a judgment. I'm not trying to pass judgment here, but it's just a lot of rough people. And have there been lessons in embodiment here? Of course, there have been. If anything, it sort of just confirmed a lot of what I already knew. See, part of me throughout all of this well, let me not go there. Part of the experience has confirmed a lot of what I already knew about who I am and my values and integrity um, but and I have learned some things. I've had some breakthroughs. I had a breakthrough recently dealing with a really antagonistic person. Um, very person being very ugly to me. A lot of the ugliness you come across is not personal in these places, and you still have to figure out ways to speak in an aligned way and communicate in a way that somebody can hear. And, and there's been lessons there for me, but sometimes it is personal in a sense. I mean, yeah, we'll just, I'll let myself say that. And I've been dealing with this one guy that's been very ugly. And I had a breakthrough recently in dealing with that and confronting that in a way that felt, like it was a breakthrough. I'll just say that. Um, and something did shift. I mean, I don't want to really say I'm grateful for the experience. Maybe at some point I'll say that. It doesn't feel totally validating for me to say something like that at this point. Um, but I felt like, yeah, I guess I don't need to keep saying it was a breakthrough, but it was a fucking breakthrough. It was a breakthrough. It was a breakthrough. And so you could say, yeah, that's part of the path of embodiment is, testing in these environments. Because what would not be embodiment is just conforming back to the world and being shitty back to somebody, attacking back, fighting fire with fire, or retreating, fight or flight. But there's this other thing, which is the path of embodiment, which is the spiritual path, which is the path of alignment, which is the high path, the high road, which is something different. It's neither this nor that. It's a way of speaking in a way that transforms a situation. It has a certain ferocity, a certain presence, a certain intensity, but it cuts clean. There's not a lot of collateral damage. And so that's good. And that's, you could say that's that's what embodiment's all about. And I'm grateful in a sense, I guess. I don't know. Let me not go there. But so I have learned some of those things. But the message I want to impart here is that at a certain point, you no longer, because I've had these moments of embodiment of I've gotten a ton of stuff wrong, believe me, and I've experimented. Like I said, it's been kind of an experimental field for working a lot of this stuff out. How do I bring the truth? How do I bring something different? How do I not conform to the world, but be conformed to God's will, to the truth, to the highest? Um, and yet, at a certain point, because let's take this example of this interaction with this guy, where it was a certain particular situation getting attacked, and there was a ferocity and an intensity, and just an ability to speak into a moment that came online. And the relief from that, and the kind of healing and the kind of breaking of a spell that happened, But then you wake up and go to work the next day, and it's still the same unconscious environment. You're still dealing with a lot of toxicity and just ambient levels of BS, and people being shitty to people, and people not having good communication abilities, and you know, accountability. And so part of that, for me, the message I think now is saying it's time to move on. It's okay to move on. It's time to move on. You don't have to just martyr yourself. You're not going to save. Please, this is not like what is it, Messiah? Because you can fall into like a savior complex or a Messiah complex, and that's not. Please don't do that. That's not good. At some point, self care, taking care of your own heart, taking care of your own spirit, and the message is it's okay to move on. It's time to move on. Christ himself, there's times when he stayed and preached and fought, and there's times when he's getting thronged and attacked, and he says, I'm out of here. And he leaves, and that's skillful. There's a time for that too. And I'm feeling that time is now, so I guess I just would want to express that, and to anybody who's needing to hear that, don't martyr yourself, don't kill yourself. As great as your realization might be, as deep as your healing might run, you're still living in this human body. These bodies are vulnerable, and they take on damage, and you can't transmute all the suffering of the world. You just can't. And even if you're well defended and well boundaried, and I still got stuff to learn and all that, don't get me wrong, but there's a certain point where it just becomes unhealthy, and it's like, well, let's just say there's a point where it comes a point where it's time to move on, for your own health and for your own path. And so I pray right now, that God would hasten that movement for me. Find me a better place, a healthier place. Protect me from harm. That's my constant prayer. God, as much as possible, you do this path for me. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm doing my best. I surrender. I try to fight when it seems like fighting is necessary. I try to ignore or release and move on when that seems right. But don't be dogmatic about anything on the path. Embodiment included. I think part of why I've hung on here so long is I just have this notion of like, I have to just keep embodying. I have to keep, learning this lesson and not getting my boundaries trespassed, and not coming home feeling like I have to decompress and digest and metabolize all this shit that I've accumulated during the day. And I've been able to do a lot of that, and that, I guess, has also been part of the path, I could say. Embodiment path is learning, seeing how much capacity I do have to let stuff move and burn off within me and transmute, etc. But you have to know that God is God. You are not God. You're just, at one level, you're a human. You're a human body, Not only that, but there is this human body. And anyways, feels like I could have said it better, but it is what it is. May you be well. God bless. God bless and protect me. God bless and protect this world. God bless and protect all of creation. Whoever happens upon this video, and just let's make it as broad as we can. All of creation. Hasten the healing in us, Lord. Hasten the alignment. Hasten the healing, the transmutation, the release of pain. May goodness flood our systems, grace flood our systems, mercy flood our systems, Maybe we be overwhelmed with goodness, grace, peace, Lord. May it be so. In Jesus' name, may it be so. In the name of God, Most High. Forgive me my many mistakes, Lord. May it be so. Amen.